So translation means a lot of things, and I'm going to talk a little bit from an industry point of view, but I think at a high level the goals are obviously to have healthcare impact, economic impact. There are lots of methods for academics to translate their research, and it's clear that there's an increased focus from funding agencies worldwide to focus on translation and commercialization of research results. Certainly within OCT, the economic impact has been very impressive. Today there are roughly 40 system companies, there are hundreds of research groups around the world, thousands of patents, and hundreds of millions of dollars of investment and corporate acquisitions, and almost $2 billion in cumulative equipment sales over the past decade. And certainly there's been tremendous clinical impact, particularly in ophthalmology. It's a standard of care. There are over 20 million patients a year, almost one person per second somewhere around the world is undergoing an ophthalmic OCT scan. In 2010 alone, there was nearly $1 billion of reimbursement. So certainly it's advanced scientific and clinical understanding and treatments, not just in ophthalmology, but increasingly now in cardiovascular care and cancer. There are lots of opportunities that remain in OCT, and hopefully from this talk it'll be clear that it was really a complex ecosphere that helped power the successful translation of this technology. There are lots of OCT concepts. The bottom line is that today you can build low-cost systems that can image at depths which are clinically relevant to many diseases and industrial applications. The technology is a rich combination of engineering disciplines, which makes it fun to work on. There are certainly strong synergies with other industries, and OCT wouldn't be where it is today if it weren't for the telecommunications, fiber optic industry, and computer industry. And it was very important in the early development of OCT. Today, industrial R&D dollars are about on par with government R&D dollars, about $80 million a year, and the message there is for really researchers to pick topics carefully, to collaborate and not compete within the industrial base. You know, from an industry point of view, there's a lot to translation of research into the clinical practice. It's very hard. It's hard for established companies. It's especially hard for startups to do all the things you need to do of raising funds and getting a team and building manufacturing lines and quality systems and scaling sales and distribution. It's a lot of work, and you know, there's kind of a simplified view of the development pathway there, and there are lots of steps to it. And it suffices to say that really the research world only sort of does the first few steps of this commercialization, and there's a lot of work left to be done, and it can take a long time. And this timeline is kind of borrowed from a Zeiss slide, and it shows that there are sort of four phases: this development of a product and entering that product into the marketplace. That can take 3 to 5 years. And then there's a whole lot of work once that product is out there and you're getting initial sales to get clinical evidence and iterate the product in the market. And hopefully at the end of that phase, which can take 6 to 10 years, you're at the point where now you can really get some market growth and competitors often enter the marketplace. And then ultimately you're looking at next generation systems. And this timeline is exactly what happened in both ophthalmology and cardiology, which are the two big OCT markets today. So in ophthalmology, you know, many years ago, almost 20 years ago, early ophthalmic research by various people around the world showed tremendous promise for clinical impact. And here are some pictures of some systems that were built at MIT and used for clinical studies at the New England Eye Center. And early on, in roughly 1992, there was a company founded. 2 years later, Zeiss acquired that company, and then 2 years after that, the first product was introduced. And you can see this early prototype in this video here. You can see, you know, these old CRT systems. It was built on a Macintosh computer. You can see the laser scanning through the optic disc here, producing a real-time image on the CRT display. And despite the fact that that was a relatively primitive system, it grew to almost 5,000 patients were imaged with this early prototype. And if you compare that with technology today, you see here's a state-of-the-art system built, just released by OptiView called Avante. You see beautiful ergonomic designs here, sophisticated software, imaging at, you know, much higher speeds. And basically with a click of a button, you're imaging a huge chunk of the retina. You're doing motion stabilization, segmentation of images, and so forth. So the technology's come a tremendous way. But it took lots of steps, and here's a slide from Zeiss kind of illustrating all the different product iterations they went through as they released this product to market and then fine-tune it. And you can see this graphically by looking at various kinds of metrics. A key part was the initial release of this product. And in green there, you can see the number of publications as you start to get a reliable product in the hands of clinicians around the world and researchers around the world that find the best use of that technology. The NIH starts to apply funding. You see lots of people were treated this disease and this product, and eventually lots of competitors start to enter this marketplace. And in addition to the point that it can take a long time to develop this technology, a secondary point is relatively small organizations, by focusing on translation early on, can speed impact to patient care in a big way. In this case, almost 5 to 10 years. But it wasn't just one research organization or one company. It was a whole ecosphere of clinicians and scientists around the world publishing, patents, government funding, various companies entering the marketplace. And this correlated ecosphere is what really powered the success. And you can see it quite nicely followed this phased approach. It took 3 to 5 years to get that product, a startup company out. It got acquired by a larger company and get into the marketplace. Many years to collect clinical evidence and validation, iterate that product, and eventually some rapid growth. And then finally, the next generation systems in the form of Fourier domain OCT. And the exact same thing happened in intravascular OCT. Early studies showed tremendous promise of OCT over ultrasound, primarily in the form of higher resolution and higher speeds. Here you can see some cartoons by courtesy St. Jude Medical of a guide wire and an OCT catheter going over that, producing a helical scan pattern of the interior of this lumen. But again, a company was founded in 1998. The first product was released 6 years later, and eventually that company got acquired by Goodman and then by St. Jude Medical. And just like with Zeiss, St. Jude went through many iterations of this product, spent a lot of time, a lot of effort, worked with researchers, worked with clinicians to tune this to the marketplace. And the same kind of metrics exist. You see the release of this early product, getting a reliable product in the hands of clinicians and fine-tuning that. The publications grow, the number of procedures grow, the revenue grow, and eventually competitors enter the marketplace. In this case, there was almost 9 years between the release of this first product and the release of the second product. So again, the opportunity of relatively small organizations to focus on translation early on can really speed impact. And here you see that there are many other fields being explored, and there's just been dramatic growth in the number of papers. And really this growth is dictated by fertile research frontiers, government funding, clinical needs, and again, the availability of commercially reliable equipment that gets in the hands of clinicians. And to some extent, these publications are a bellwether for future translation of new OCT applications. And for sure, there's lots of OCT applications, so many places you need high resolution and high speed. In green is shown ophthalmology and cardiology, the predominance of the market today, but there are various companies now releasing in GI, dermatology, pulmonology, and so forth. And if you look at a little closer at these various companies, you see there's lots of them, again, on the order of 40 system companies in various stages of maturity, and each one has a little bit different history in how they've approached commercialization and translation of research. But what's very interesting is almost 80% of them started as startup companies. So it's really a testament to the entrepreneurial spirit and the power of startup companies to translate technology. In addition, almost 42% of them were associated with government funding. So either directly by starting companies within universities or by licensing technology or collaborating with existing companies. And if you look at government funding over the last decade, here are some examples of NSF, Canadian, UK, and NIH funding. You can see a very strong growth to the funding profile. And over the last decade, there's been almost $500 million invested. And without this government investment, it was a key enabler for the development and translation of OCT. And if you look at the return on investment, just look at it from an economic point of view, from a taxpayer point of view. Here's a cumulative NIH funding, and here's just one simple economic metric of the system revenue. Many multiples, if only all taxpayer dollars had this kind of return. And that's in addition, of course, to the scientific and healthcare impact. There are lots of future opportunities in the conference. You know, all the world experts are here for the next week to present the technology frontiers and the application frontiers, so I won't go through that, except to say on the application front, it's clear we're in a different regime here today. There's aging populations, there's huge government deficits, and healthcare spending is growing at unsustainable rates. So focusing on cost is an important part of picking your research topics and bringing products to market. So in summary, the clinical translation of OCT has been impactful, both scientifically, clinically, and economically, and I think from my perspective, the ROA has been outstanding. Translation is hard, it takes a long time, it's dependent on many factors, including entrepreneurism has played a big role. Focusing on translation can dramatically speed timelines and offers the chance for relatively small organizations to have a big impact. And there are lots of OCT research and business opportunities that remain that can improve healthcare and quality of life.